Iron Man 3 is the third and, as far as I know, final standalone movie to feature Iron Man, and also the first movie of Phase 2 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, as I mentioned before, the first Iron Man is just one of the coolest superhero movies out there. Some might even call it the best movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Then along the way, we got Iron Man 2, which I feel is a good but not great movie. So as a result, with the first Iron Man being as awesome as it is, it left us wanting to see another Iron Man movie that focused more on what we loved about the first Iron Man. So of course, everyone was excited to know we were getting Iron Man 3. But we were also skeptical at the same time, not just because it is another sequel, but also because this is the first movie to follow the Avengers, which was an amazing movie. So from this point, it was all a matter to find out that if Iron Man 3 could kick off Phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe just as well as Iron Man kicked off Phase 1. So this movie opens up in New Year's Eve of 1999. We see Tony at this big New Year's Eve party. He's with Rebecca Hall. She's a botanist. And what I think is cool about this scene is this is reflecting more of what Tony was like before he became Iron Man. You know, he was a really carefree guy. He's really irresponsible, and all he really cares about is money, hot girls, and just being awesome. Although, one thing that I really loved about this scene is we actually see the moment where Yinsen and Tony met for the very first time. You realize that this is the moment that Yinsen was telling Tony about when they met in the cave of the first Iron Man. I just thought that was really cool that they made that connection for this movie. And later on in the evening, Tony gets stopped by this crippled scientist. His name is Aldrich Killian. He's the head of this science division called AIM. He wants Tony to back him up on some sort of project that he's undergoing. Tony tells him in the elevator, it's like, hey, just go up to the top of the roof and I will meet you there in 20 minutes, I promise. And yeah, of course, Tony never shows up. And you watch that scene, it leaves you like, oh man, I hope that doesn't come back to bite him in the ass. It probably will. So now the movie flashes back to the present day. It's about 6 months since the events from the Avengers happened. And throughout the beginning of the movie, we see how much of a toll the events from the Avengers really has taken on Tony. He's having some really bad anxiety attacks. He's suffering from PTSD. He can't even sleep at night because he gets nightmares from the events. And as a result, all he's been able to do is just work on his Iron Man suit. But what is really cool is you see in the beginning Tony working on a new Iron Man suit called Mark 42. And what's really cool about this suit is it has the capability of flying over to him and just forming piece by piece to make the suit upon Tony. It's just really cool to once again see how much of a genius Tony is, and the fact that not only can he make an Iron Man suit, but he's continuing to find ways to further upgrade it. But at the same time, because he's been focusing all of his attention into his work, it's really putting a strain on his relationship with Pepper. Now, speaking of Pepper, she's still doing a huge part in helping run Stark Industries. Happy is now her bodyguard. And here, she actually runs into Aldrich Killian, who's no longer crippled. He's now in really good shape for himself, now still running the AIM industry that he told Tony about. And he tells Pepper that his idea, his goal, is to harness the brain's power to alter the human's DNA so that humans can become impervious to pain, disease, all of it. And of course, it does seem like a good idea, but Pepper is of course worried of the idea of this could lead to human soldiers. It could just cause more bad than it would do good. So as a result, she turns him down, but Happy, he's a little more suspicious towards Aldrich Killian. He feels Killian and his assistant, who he encountered earlier, he thinks they might be up to something. He's trying to tell Tony about this. But at this point, Tony realizes that he just might have a much bigger problem on his hands. And that is when Tony turns on the TV and he sees this video footage of a terrorist, the leader of the Ten Rings, known as the Mandarin, who's played by Ben Kingsley. And I'm gonna say this, when I saw the Mandarin for the first time in the movie and the way Ben Kingsley was portraying him, I thought he was gonna be a great villain. I mean, he came off as really methodical and menacing and just evil. Everything you want in the arch enemy for Iron Man. It leaves you wondering how exactly Tony's going to be able to beat this guy. And the Mandarin's been having all these bombings go off all over the country, but there's no sign of any explosive devices anywhere, so it's leaving everyone wondering how he was able to cause these. But because Tony is not affiliated with the government, there's nothing that he can really do to get involved. As a result, he just needs to allow Rhodey, who is now known as the Iron Patriot, to figure all this out. Happy eventually runs into Killian's assistant again. He gets into a little bit of a scuffle with this guy, but when Happy punches this guy in the face, he just completely reformats his face, and as if his punch didn't do anything to him. Which leaves you sitting there like, oh shit, this is one of those guys who must have underwent that Extremis experiment that Killian was telling Pepper about. In the meantime, there appears to be another Extremis guy who's with Killian's assistant, but his problem is he doesn't seem to be accepting the Extremis itself. And as a result, this dude's body just blows up. It creates a massive explosion which kills a bunch of people and severely injures Happy. The Mandarin eventually appears on TV again. He takes full responsibility for the bomb and he warns the President of the United States that he's coming for him soon. This whole event just officially pushes Tony over the edge and he looks into the camera. He's trying to send a message to the Mandarin. And he basically says, you know what? I know you're a fucking pussy and on the chance you have the balls to actually come face me, why don't you do it? Here's my address. So after doing all that, Tony now does a little more investigation into this bombing. He discovers that the very first one occurred in Tennessee. He knows that's where he needs to go next. In the meantime, Rebecca Hall has shown up to Tony's mansion where she tells Tony and Pepper that she believes her boss, Aldrich Killian, just might be working for the Mandarin. However, before anything can happen, these 3 gunship helicopters come in and just start bombing the shit out of Tony's mansion. Tony's able to get Rebecca Hall and Pepper out of there, but he's still under fire from these helicopters. Tony's able to use the Mark 42 suit to shoot down 2 of the choppers, but it eventually becomes too much of him. His house is taken down and he falls into the ocean with it. So as a result of all that, everyone, including Pepper, now thinks Tony's dead. Luckily, the Mark 42 has been able to autopilot itself towards Tennessee, but unfortunately by the time it gets there, the suit has just powered down. Now Tony's goal is to find a way to repower his suit so he can eventually go find the Mandarin and take him down. So he goes to this garage. It appears to be abandoned. He just wants to do a little work on the suit here. And here's where Tony gets confronted, and we are introduced to the little kid who lives in this house, played by Ty Simpkins. Now, if you remember from my Jurassic World spoiler from way back in the day, you know I was really hard on Ty Simpkins during that movie. Because in Jurassic World, he came off as a really obnoxious, know-it-all kid. I didn't really like who his character was. He just personally annoyed the shit out of me. In Iron Man 3, however, I think Ty Simpkins does a really good job here. He's a really smart kid in this one, too. He develops a good relationship with Tony as his sidekick. He's constantly throwing sarcasm at Tony. Tony's throwing it right back at him. It made for some really funny moments and you could tell there was good chemistry between them. I mean, is Ty Simpkins annoying in this movie? Yes, he is, but it's that lovable annoying. You know, like what you'd expect with maybe a little brother or cousin, someone like that. So Ty Simpkins tells Tony a little bit more about the bombing that happened. They all say it was just Army guy who went insane and he killed himself in an explosion. Tony does a little bit more research on this. He goes to find the Army soldier's mother in a bar and he tells her that there's a chance maybe her son didn't actually kill himself. But before anything else can be figured out, Tony gets attacked by another one of these Extremis soldiers. Tony, of course, is trying to put up a fight against her, but because she has Extremis in her DNA, there's nothing he can really do that's gonna harm her. But Tony, being the fucking genius that he is, he's able to lure this woman into a room. He opens up this gas line, which creates a massive explosion, which kills her. So now, after all this happening, Tony's beginning to realize that there's probably a clear connection between the Extremis and the Mandarin. Tony's able to get in touch with Rhodey, and Rhodey's able to give him the information he needs to find the data on the Mandarin. Tony's able to sneak into a camera crew van at one of these beauty pageants to try to download the data itself. And in this moment, Tony runs into one of the cameramen and he claims to be Tony's biggest fan ever. Like, he's just modeled his hairline at him. He's got a tattoo of Tony's face on his arm, but it's not that accurate because they had him do it off a doll he made of Tony. I'm sorry, but if I'm Tony, I would have just gotten the fuck out of that van right then and right there, because a fan who's that crazy is probably going to fucking kill you. But of course, this guy agrees to help Tony hack into the servers, and here's where Tony uncovers a little bit more about what the Extremis project really is. And he sees in this video footage that he discovers that a lot of the people who volunteered for the Extremis experiment were people who struggled with really bad injuries. You know, some might have had diseases or were amputees. And the footage showed that if the person could accept the Extremis, then they'd be able to recover from all wounds. They'd become impervious to disease, their limbs would just grow back, they wouldn't be able to get hurt from pretty much anything. However, if their body could not accept Extremis, then they would just completely overheat from it and eventually blow up. This allows Tony to make all these connections, and the fact that these are how all these explosions have been happening. Tony's now able to hijack the American airwaves, and he's able to trace that the Mandarin's location is in Miami. Unfortunately, Tony's Iron Man suit is still charging, so he can't go confront the Mandarin with that. But then Ty Simpkins just tells Tony over the phone, it's like, hey, you're a mechanic, why don't you just build something? So with that, Tony goes to a hardware store, he buys a bunch of different stuff, and he just makes a bunch of makeshift weaponry from it. And I just love seeing what he's capable of making with nothing, because it goes back to what happened in the first Iron Man. He made an Iron Man suit from a box of scraps in a cave. It's a clear example right here that the Iron Man suit is not Tony's superpower. His genius is his superpower. We didn't really get to see a whole lot of that in Iron Man 2. Okay, granted, he created a new element, but I really wanted to see more of that superhuman level genius. That was much more apparent in this movie, and I thought it was awesome. So eventually Tony's able to track down where the Mandarin is hiding. He gets to the Mandarin's palace. And here comes the moment in this movie that officially divided all of the fans who saw it. Because here, Tony finds a Mandarin only to find out that the Mandarin is just some drunk, pill-popping British actor who's a complete idiot. And Tony's reaction when he sees the Mandarin for the first time is the same one we have, which is all like, who the hell is this idiot? We find out this guy's real name is Trevor Slattery, and he was hired by the Extremis people to play this Mandarin character to take responsibility for the explosions that were happening. Now, first things first, I want to give some props to Ben Kingsley because he showed in this movie that he truly is a great actor. I mean, he played a really methodical, menacing, evil terrorist very well when he needed to, and he was able to play a drunk, pill-popping, stupid, idiot actor when he needed to. That right there is range. But as I mentioned, this was a moment that completely divided fans, to which some were able to roll with it and some hated this move so much that people were just like, nope, fucking done with this movie, fuck this movie, they didn't need to do that, I'm done, I hate this. And this guy's supposed to be a really smart person like Tony. He's supposed to be really skilled in martial arts, and the 10 rings that he have are each supposed to give him a specific power to combat Iron Man. And as a result, since this guy is just none of that whatsoever, it obviously pissed at least a few fans off pretty badly. There were, however, people like myself who were able to roll with this. Because when you look at it from a movie perspective, it's actually a really genius idea. Take this guy, have him play this terrorist that's taken all the responsibility for these actions, make him the focus of the US government. And with him being the center of the government's attention, the person that they need to bring down, the government's just going to be chasing their tail because this guy's not real. As a result, the people in Extremis can do what they want to do and no one's really going to be watching them for it. Soon enough, Tony gets captured by these people and he finds out the real person behind all of this is Aldrich Killian. He shows him video footage that he's kidnapped Pepper and he's instilled her with the Extremists, so now it's just fingers crossed that her body will accept it. And he tells Tony that his overall plan is to get the president, publicly execute him in the Iron Patriot suit that they have taken from Rhodey. This will in turn make the vice president the new president of the United States, who will then answer to Aldrich Killian, because Aldrich Killian has promised the vice president that he will use Extremis to cure his daughter of her amputated leg. That's who we'll have on one hand, and on the other hand, he will have the world's most dangerous terrorist. This will just officially make Aldrich Killian the most powerful man in the whole world with what he can control now. Luckily, Tony's able to escape his captivity by summoning the Mark 42 suit, which has now been charged enough for him to use it. With that, Tony's now able to use the Iron Man army to take out everyone in the palace. He's eventually able to save Rhodey. Unfortunately, they're too late to save the president from being kidnapped from Air Force One by the Extremis soldiers. But luckily, Tony's able to finally kill Aldrich Killian's assistant, and he's also able to save a lot of the people who fell out of Air Force One from dying. Tony and Rhodey are able to track down where the president is, and we see that Aldrich Killian plans to publicly execute him in this massive shipyard. And with all the Extremis soldiers standing guard, Tony and Rhodey know they're gonna need some backup to take them down. And here, Tony has Jarvis engage the house party protocol, which includes all of the Iron Man suits that Tony has built coming to serve as their own personal army. Why Tony didn't do this when those 3 helicopters were shooting down his mansion, I will never know. But now we get a really intense and awesome action-packed fight between all of the Iron Men and the Extremis soldiers. And what's really cool about each of these Iron Man suits is they're all programmed for specific functions, so they all look different and really unique, which is great. So Rhodey is eventually able to save the president, but Tony still has to save Pepper. Tony's just about able to save her, but Aldrich Killian shows up and he just burns down the crane that she's on, which leads her to fall 200 feet to her apparent death. But now we finally get to see Tony Stark and Aldrich Killian throw down with each other. Tony's using a bunch of different Iron Man suits to fight him, but Aldrich Killian keeps regenerating himself and he's using fire to fight against Tony. It made for a really sick fight. Luckily though, Tony's able to trap Aldrich Killian in the Mark 42 suit, and then he has the Mark 42 blow up with Aldrich Killian inside it. Unfortunately though, Aldrich Killian was able to survive that, and now Tony is left completely defenseless. However, before Aldrich can kill Tony, he looks at Tony and says, "You were looking for the Mandarin? I am the Mandarin." I do know this movie's intention was to make Aldrich Killian their interpretation of the Mandarin, and the fact that he has the dragon tattoos on his chest like the Mandarin does in the comics. But I never really took that statement of, oh, I am the Mandarin, as in I am the character the Mandarin, because he's not that. I mean, he is in fact the one who's been behind everything that's happened, so by a metaphorical and figurative standpoint, he is the Mandarin. However, before Aldrich Killian can kill Tony, we discovered that Pepper has survived the fall because her body accepted the Extremis experiment. and she officially uses one of the Iron Man arms to fire a repulsor and a missile at Aldrich Killian, which blows him up and finally kills him. So now that Tony and Pepper are together again, Tony wants to show Pepper that she means way more to him than anything he's ever done. And with that, he orders the Clean Slate Protocol, which destroys all of the Iron Man suits that are still functioning. So with that, the Vice President and Trevor Slattery, they are both arrested for their involvement in Extremis. Tony's able to do a little more research in the Extremis project itself, which he's able to use to remove it from Pepper and also to remove the shrapnel that's in his heart. We also see that Tony has rebuilt Ty Simpkins this new lab for him to work with as a way of thanking him for the help he gave Tony. And in the final scene, Tony takes the arc reactor that was in his chest, he throws it over the ocean, and he says that although he may no longer have a suit, he will always be Iron Man. So all in all, I do think Iron Man 3 is a really good movie. I mean, Robert Downey Jr., Gwyneth Paltrow, Don Cheadle, they all continue to do a great job in their roles. I loved how this movie focused more on Tony Stark's genius than the Iron Man suit itself. I thought that worked out great for this movie. Ty Simpkins was great in this movie, which was a big surprise at the time because little kid actors, they usually don't do well, but he did very well in this movie. Guy Pearce, I thought, was a really good villain as Aldrich Killian. I thought he did well for what this movie wanted him to be. The action scenes and the fight scenes, they look great visually and they are really entertaining when they do happen. The new Iron Man suits that we see, especially Mark 42, I thought were all awesome. My gripes with this movie, however, are I do feel this movie didn't know what tone it wanted to be at times. I mean, there were a lot of instances in this movie where it tried to take a tone from being serious and then immediately took a tone to being funny. So it felt a little sloppy and this movie didn't know what it was trying to be at times. And like everyone who saw this movie, I do wish they had done the Mandarin the way he was in the comics, but I don't let it bring the movie down as much as a lot of fans do. And I will say this is another solid entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it kicked off Phase 2 in the MCU very well. So that's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you all next time.